Hey, and welcome back to the deep dive. We're tackling some really intriguing source material you sent our way today.
And it feels particularly relevant, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The source kicks off talking about this gloomy weather, you know,
Oh, yeah.
a miserable end to Sunday, rain all day,
Yeah.
just an awful May, and start to June, apparently.
Exactly. And the source notes that this kind of persistent, dreary weather is precisely the kind of thing that makes you, well, look up. Makes you start asking questions about the sky, especially, those strange smudges or trails you sometimes see.
Right. So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack a very specific perspective on these. We're diving into excerpts from a YouTube video transcript.
Okay.
It features a Polish clairvoyant sharing his personal observations and what he actually describes as a vision concerning these smudges.
That's right. So we're here to explore this source's unique claims. What he believes they're made of, why they might be there, their potential effects.
And critically, how he says these insights came to him, which is quite a story in itself.
Yeah. The source also touches on contemplating broader philosophical questions, but honestly, the detailed vision he shares in this transcript, it focuses entirely on these sky trails.
Okay, so let's get into it. The narrative starts with something pretty relatable, actually, an observation he's made himself over time.
He describes this strong, almost predictable link. When he sees these smudges appear, sometimes forming that distinct chessboard pattern.
Carcinogenic, yeah.
Right, Carcinogenic. He finds it's a clear sign that bad weather is on the way.
And not just for a few hours.
No, exactly. He stresses this isn't brief. He says it ruins the weather for the whole cycle, for days. It's a prolonged shift.
And he does acknowledge the usual explanations, condensation trails from planes, that kind of thing. But his feeling, his gut feeling, is that there's something more involved. He calls it a strange connection, like Jaini Pausani. He senses something off.
And this is where his account takes a turn, isn't it? Into the visionary aspect.
Yeah. He describes focusing really intently on this question, what are these things? And then apparently just suddenly, a single word popped into his head.
Which was?
Sarcosa.
Sarcosa. Okay.
So following this, the source explains he immediately, looked it up, Googled it, presumably.
Right.
And he found sarcoidosa on Wikipedia. He actually shares the definition he found right there in the source.
Okay. What did it say?
Well, basically, it's an inflammatory disease.
Huh.
Causes these small lumps, granulomas, to form in different organs. Affects the immune system. The cause isn't really known. Often hits the lungs like 90% of cases, apparently.
Wow.
And stuff to diagnose, treatment's limited, no known cure. That's the gist he got from Wikipedia.
And the connection for him was the similarity in the words sarcosa and sarcoidosa.
Yeah, exactly. He felt its similarity was very twin-like, very similar. For him, that wasn't a coincidence. It felt significant.
Yep.
Like a clue to the nature of the smudges.
So moving on from just the word, did the vision offer details about what these smudges are actually made of?
It did, yeah. According to his vision, they contain something called mikroblaszki.
Mikroblaszki.
Which he describes as microscopic, sharp microflakes, like tiny, sharp fragments.
Okay, sharp microflakes. That sounds potentially not great.
Well, yeah, the potential consequences he describes are pretty concerning. According to the source, these microflakes have, and this is his term, carcinogenic possibilities.
Right.
He calls them microcancerogene. The claim is they disperse easily in the air, they settle on plants, and when we breathe them in, maybe ingest them from the plants, they contribute to being carcinogenic. That's the assertion.
Okay, wow. And was that the only component mentioned?
He also mentions another claim component, pesticides.
Pesticides, like actual pesticides.
Yeah, the source defines them pretty simply. Substances used to kill harmful organisms, insects, fungi, weeds, standard agricultural stuff.
Right.
He does note these are also harmful to humans, which, is generally understood about pesticides. But within his vision, it seems the microflakes were presented as the main danger, the primary concern.
So based on this vision, is this just happening randomly? Like industrial byproduct or something? Or is there intent?
According to his insight, no, absolutely not accidental. He feels it's deliberate, controlled.
Deliberate?
And also not happening everywhere. He gets a sense it's geographically specific.
Okay, where does he claim it's focused?
He senses it's concentrated in specific regions of the world, particularly Europe.
Europe, mainly.
Yeah, and predominantly the Northern Hemisphere. He clarifies that this includes places like the U.S., Canada, Europe, Russia, that whole area.
So Northern Hemisphere focus. And what could possibly be the motive behind something like that, according to the source?
Well, the claim is it's being kept secret.
Secret from who?
The public. From the public, yeah. Carried out under under the cloak, as he puts it, of dealing with climate change, global warming.
Ah, okay. So presented maybe internally or to whoever is involved as a way to fight climate change.
That seems to be the idea presented in the vision, an attempt to prevent the climate from warming too severely.
A kind of secret geoengineering framed as a climate solution. Does he say how it's supposed to work?
Yeah, the source describes a kind of dual function, or maybe a function and a consequence.
Okay.
First, the idea is these microflakes, high up in the atmosphere, reflect sunlight.
Ah, reflecting sunlight.
Yeah.
Cool things down.
Right. Reduce the amount of heat and solar energy reaching the Earth's surface.
Which, interestingly, you mentioned earlier, ties back to his own observation.
Exactly. His feeling that the sky seems paler, somehow bleaker than when he was younger, he wonders if maybe this reflection is why.
Makes you think. And the second function, or you said consequence?
Yeah, more of a consequence, really. It's that these things, the microflakes and the pesticides, they don't just stay up there, they fall down.
They fall down onto what?
Onto the ground, onto, the things we consume, our food, the plants, the water, presumably.
Ah.
And the source claims these microflakes are incredibly tiny.
Yeah.
And persistent. Żywotne is the Polish word used, suggesting they last. This makes them really hard, maybe impossible, to just wash off or remove once they've settled.
Tiny, sharp, persistent, falling onto our food supply. That's quite a picture.
It is, and the source characterizes this whole activity, this alleged program, as being in an experimental phase.
Experimental. So not even something they know works or is safe, according to him.
Apparently not. Just in the phase of experiments, suggesting it's ongoing testing, not a proven solution.
Okay, this whole account, it hinges entirely on how he receives this information, doesn't it? How does he actually describe that process, the vision itself?
Right. He doesn't describe it like, watching a movie in his head or hearing voices necessarily. It's more like sudden flashes.
Flashes.
Microblaszki, yeah. Or just feelings, pestycydy. Intuitions that give a sense of direction. He compares it to solving a puzzle, like a rebus.
A rebus, okay. Does he give examples of how this works in other situations to kind of illustrate the method?
He does. He offers a couple of quick anecdotes. One involved a woman who had lost a lot of money, couldn't find it anywhere in her house.
Right.
The vision or the feeling he got was that it was in some corner furniture, maybe a sofa, maybe a bed, somewhere near decorative pillows. That was the sense.
And was it?
Well, here's the interesting part. The money was eventually found, but not exactly there. It was in a suitcase.
Okay.
But the suitcase was placed in a corner next to a chair that did have a colorful pillow on it. And apparently, the woman had been searching the wrong house entirely at first.
Ah, so the vision pointed to the right kind of location, even if the specific details weren't perfect.
Yeah.
And helped redirect her.
Exactly. He uses this example to say, these insights don't always have to be perfectly precise, but they give the essence, they give some sense, they guide. They point you in the right direction.
Okay, I see the point he's making. Was there another example?
Yeah, a quicker one. An older man lost his car key, just couldn't find it.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. The feeling the clairvoyant got for this one was a low cabinet and slippers, like maybe a shoe cabinet near the door.
Low cabinet, slippers, okay.
The man called back later, found the key. Turns out it had fallen out of his jacket pocket when he took it off near the door. He then put his shoes on and actually stepped on the key. He found it underneath his shoes, right there in that entryway area where you'd likely find, well, a low cabinet and slipper.
Wow, okay. So again, not a literal picture, but a strong sense of the location and associated items.
Precisely. And the source shares these stories to give you, the listener, a feel for the type of intuitive flash or feeling that also led him to these specific claims about the smudges.
The word sarcosa, the microflakes, the pesticides, the alleged purpose, the secrecy, all stemming from that same kind of intuitive process.
That's how he presents it, yes. So even though the original title or intro might have hinted at other big questions like where we were before birth, the actual detailed vision and the insights shared in the transcript we worked from, they really zero in entirely on these smudges.
And what's the overall takeaway feeling from the source about all this, about the smudges' vision?
He sums it up pretty bluntly near the end. His conclusion about this vision and its implications is simply not optimistic.
Not optimistic.
So let's recap quickly. This deep dive is focused solely on exploring the contents of the source material you provided. We've walked through the specific claims presented in that text.
Yeah, the intuitive link he felt to sarcoidosa, the claimed presence of these sharp microscopic flakes and pesticides.
The assertions about them being potentially carcinogenic, harmful, the whole narrative about a deliberate, secret geoengineering experiment.
Focused on the Northern Hemisphere, supposedly under the guise of climate efforts, and still in an experimental phase, according to him.
And just to be absolutely clear, crystal clear, we've simply reported the specific information contained within this single source.
Right. This is one person's account, one person's vision or feeling about these phenomena. We are not verifying it. We're not endorsing it. We're not validating these claims at all.
We're just laying out the narrative exactly as it was shared in the text you provided for this deep dive.
Yeah.
That was the mission.
Which brings us then to our final provocative thought for you, the listener.
Given the information shared just now, from this source, this idea that maybe unseen processes are happening way up above us, with potentially really significant impacts on our health, our environment, and also the idea that insights or understanding could potentially come from avenues outside, conventional science.
Like these personal visions or intuitive flashes.
Right. How might hearing this account influence the way you observe the sky next time you look up? Does it change anything?
Or maybe, how might it affect the way you process and evaluate all the different kinds of information, the different claims that you encounter every day?
What really stands out to you from this deep dive into this particular, quite unusual source?
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us.
See you on the next deep dive.